Welcome to Green Building Matters, the podcast that matters for green building professionals. Learn insight in green buildings as we interview today's experts in LEED and WELL. We'll learn from their career paths, war stories, and all things green, because green building matters. And now our host, and yes, he has every LEED and WELL credential. Here's Charlie Cicchetti.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Cicchetti. We've got another LEED fellow on today with us, coming to us from the New York, New Jersey area, Jason Kliwinski. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Well, I know we've run into each other on the education front. GBS is a USGBC education partner, and so is one of the two entities that you're heavily involved with. So we're going to get into that. I know you love to teach. I know you do some adjunct professor work, but I always like to start, Jason, where'd you grow up and where'd you go to school?
Well, I like to tell folks that I'm a Jersey tomato. So I was born in Trenton, New Jersey, and I grew up in a little suburb of Pennington, New Jersey, not too far away. Went to school, secondary school at Hopewell Valley Regional Public Schools. So I went to the public school system, and then I went to college at the New Jersey Institute of Technology up in Newark. So I didn't go too far from home.
Nice.
And, that's sort of where I got my start.
And, you got a bachelor's in architecture. So did you know you wanted to be an architect? Did someone inspire you along the way to guide you to architecture? How'd that come about?
Well, I knew when I graduated high school, unlike most kids, I actually knew what I was going to go to college for.
Nice.
And that was because my high school had a very unique program. It had a 4-year architecture program. So my 4th year of architecture classes in high school was actually my first year of college credit. Wow. So I get a real head start in that sense.
No, absolutely. That's hopefully there's more and more of those programs out there. Did you have an aha moment about sustainability? So maybe you're going down the architecture path, but when did you kind of really be like, man, sustainability, that's what I really want to make a career out of?
You know, it honestly didn't dawn on me until I was in college. In about my second year of school, we had one class out of 5 years on sustainability and green building, and it was called Building Performance. It was taught by Irv Bales, my professor at the time, and it really focused on passive strategies, passive solar, passive ventilation, and that's what piqued my interest in it. And I thought, why aren't there any other classes in this subject being taught? And from that point on, I was kind of hooked. And then there was just a series of events. My second year of college was 1990. 1992, the Kyoto Protocol got signed. 1998, after I had graduated, the U.S. Green Building Council formed. And then in 2000, the LEED rating system rolled out. So there was just this series of events that happened. I was sort of in the right place at the right time. And I thought, this is really the way that we should be thinking about architecture and the built environment and the planet. And that was it. That was it for me.
Wow. And in the year 2000 is when those first LEED projects were certified. And it looks like, from looking at your profile, you were involved with some early 2000s LEED projects, even the Microsoft School of Future, and then several LEED for Schools projects. So right place, right time there to get that early LEED experience.
Yeah, I couldn't have planned it if I tried, And when LEED came out, I saw it as a way of being a real good organizational structure to talk to people about green building. When I graduated college in 1995, I really wanted sustainability and green building to be part of what I did. But when I talked to people about it, I just got blank stares. And so I sort of took the guerrilla approach. I did as much as I could, when I could, where I could, and back in the early 90s and 2000s, finding products and systems was very hard. But when LEED came out, it created this structure and this process that didn't exist before. And that's really been the power of it over the last, I'd say, 15 years.
Definitely. And you mentioned one of your professors was probably a mentor there while you were in college, but anyone else have an early influence, maybe open a door for you along the way?
Well, I'd say that high school teacher, Mr. Clayton, who was my architecture teacher, certainly pointed me in the direction of architecture, not necessarily green building.
Right.
But my first real job was with a very small firm in Newark, not far from where I went to college, for a company called D.F. Gibson Architects. And David Gibson who I still associate and do work with to this day,
great.
really gave me a platform and some significant projects to explore sustainability and high performance design in.
Man, it's always good to give those shout outs to those that helped us along the way and influenced us and again, maybe opened the door. Let's talk a little bit about, what you're doing today. And, you've got a couple roles, right? I mean, you lead a design firm and you also have the Green Building Center there in the New Jersey area. So can you tell us a little bit about your two companies and just fill in some blanks there?
Sure. So, going the conventional architectural practice route, I did my internship for 3.5 years, eventually got my license, and I worked for other architects for about 18 years. Worked my way up from a, lowly intern to the director of sustainability at several firms.
Nice.
And as part of that process, we had big clients who were coming to us asking us to do work on their houses. And my firm didn't do residential. So, I went to the CEO of the firm and I said, do you mind if I start my own little residential practice to cater to these clients? I don't want to send them to another architect. And so Designs for Life, my architectural firm, was really born from that.
Gotcha.
And we started creating, sustainable residential projects for these existing clients. And that continued on as I was working for various firms. And then when I left, we had started the Green Building Center, which was really meant to take things to a whole nother level, not just practice architecture, but really practice this idea of integrated project delivery, which, as you know, in a green building in particular, bringing in all the stakeholders early and throughout the process is sort of the core of integrated project delivery. But the conventional practice of architecture doesn't do that. It's very specialized, as are most professions related to the building industry. So the center's whole model was to really create this integrative project experience for clients where we brought owners, engineers, architects, contractors, product suppliers together under one roof.
I love it. And that's where I've gotten to know you on that education front through the Green Building Center. But I want to ask a residential question. See, my expertise, Jason, is on the commercial building side. You're unique because you have commercial, you have schools, and then you also have the residential. If I were going to build a new home today, are you a fan of Lead for Homes, a living building, passive house, a combination of? What would you suggest to someone setting out to build that long-term home?
Well, I am kind of unique in that I'm a bit of a throwback to the master architect concept. I don't specialize in any one building type. I do all of them, and I do all of them actively today, which is really nice for the variety. But for a home project, I would still recommend that folks follow the Lead for Home rating system, even if it's just as a guideline, even if you don't intend to certify, because it's still a very powerful organizational tool and a process that you can follow start to finish to achieve very high level results. Now, if you want to go to the next level and talk about passive house or living building challenge, then you're talking about something that's net zero energy, net zero water, net zero waste. You're certainly going to want to look at something like living building challenge or passive house for that level. But passive house, I've looked at passive house, and I have to tell you, while I like it, it's focused on energy. It's not holistic like LEED is,
sure,
or living building challenge. And that's the one issue I have with things like that have blinders on and only look at one real aspect of sustainability. So, sustainability is about integration and not being so highly specialized.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for giving us some residential experience there. Master architect. I love that phrase. So what are some of your proudest achievements to date? It's okay to look back on the highlight reel and, what stands out to you? You're a LEED fellow. You've got your own firm. You've started this Green Building Center. But I don't know, what are some of your proudest achievements?
Well, going back even before that, I would say being one of the first in my family to go to college and to pay my own way through it,
love it,
has kind of put me where I am. So that was not easy. And I was one of those kids who worked through college to pay for it. So that was an accomplishment. Getting my license as an architect was much harder than getting my LEED accreditation.
Sure.
But certainly being, one of the first LEED APs in the country, a LEED fellow, and having the opportunity to work on some of the great projects I've been able to with some of the firms I've been at, the Microsoft School of the Future you mentioned, which was a new ground up LEED Gold certified high school, Thomas Edison State College, Preservation and Addition right next to the State House in Trenton, a project that we did with the University of Monterrey in Mexico for a new academic center with a world famous architect, Tadao Ando, was pretty cool. And just the whole creation of the Green Building Center and really realizing this concept of integrated project delivery in a physical company process and entity, I think is something that's quite unique in the market.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And humbling too, going off to college there and having to make your own way and then becoming a licensed architect and early lead adopter. And for those that don't know, I mean, a lead fellow, you have to have really been contributing to this industry, this green building movement for over 10 years. So it's quite the mark. Yeah, Jason, let's talk about today. What's keeping you busy today?
Well, I split my time today between three things: the practice of architecture in multiple market sectors, the educational component where we do workshops and seminars for both public and private entities and as an adjunct at universities, and the green building consulting where we're bringing a whole suite of lead services, including commissioning and energy modeling and indoor air quality assessment to the table. Some of the more even avant-garde stuff than that is really pushing towards triple net zero energy, water, and waste, which of course is the core of the Living Building Challenge.
Triple net zero. No, I love it. And now tell us a little bit on the teaching side. We'll get to more of the projects, but I think you've got to know me a little bit. I love to teach, but I just think it's great. You're teaching these college classes. What are you seeing? I don't know if you know it, but 40% of those signed up for a lead exam right now are in high school or college. So yeah, I think you had that influence, just that high school teacher pushing you towards architecture. So what are you seeing with the college classes these days? Do we actually have lead as part of the class name, or is it overall sustainability? Like, what's being taught out there right now?
Well, I haven't seen too many universities that actively use the word lead in their curriculum and content.
Sure.
And I think that's part of having to be sort of product agnostic, if you will.
That's fair.
But when you look at the content of the courses, they're based on lead.
Gotcha.
They almost follow the lead structure verbatim in many cases.
Right.
So you're getting prep for the lead green associate test. And most college students today in the design field, they want and they're demanding the education to be able to go out and take the lead green associate test before they even graduate college.
Love it. No, it's a differentiator. It really is a career boost. And, a lot of architect firms require it too. We work with, firms like HOK and Perkins & Will and others, and they require not just a lead green associate, but let's move on and take a lead AP BD plus C. So big head start there coming out of college. So, all right, let's talk a little bit more on just, there's what's going on today. And you've mentioned, I think you mentioned wellness a little bit. You said air quality. So what's your take on the wellness real estate movement? Well, fit well, how's that affecting your business?
Well, if you were going to ask me where sustainability is going next and what the next big thing is, that would be the answer. The whole health and wellness movement in sustainability has exploded. And in part, that's because we now have some research to back up some of the claims around health and wellness. When it comes to stuff like daylighting and ventilation and non-toxic products, the transformation of that into productivity, reduced absenteeism, reduced medical bills, and the cost implications of that for employers is really starting to be understood in the last, I'll say, 3 years, relatively new than it ever has. And certainly with the creation of the well building standard, which came out of good old New York City, that has taken it to a whole nother level in terms of actually documenting and certifying those efforts.
Yeah. No, that was what I was going to ask you next. But yeah, you heard it here. The wellness movement, it's happening. It's just a different conversation. It helped me with this one, but I understand when LEED was young and you were in it early, just the lack of education. Hey, if a contractor saw it was a LEED project, they just add a bunch of money to the budget and they just didn't know. Maybe that's happening now with well and the well building standard, but I just think everyone needs to get up to speed quickly, and it doesn't have to be as costly. And we're just having different conversations, right? It's not saving kilowatt hours on a power bill and being less of an impact to the environment like LEED, great program. Now it's, like Jason said, productivity, presenteeism, absenteeism being reduced. So we just have to get a lot of education out there in the marketplace, right? It's just too new right now.
Well, today is where LEED was in 2002.
Gotcha.
So, but the difference is that Well, which of course is now owned by GBCI, the same organization that manages LEED, has 15 years of LEED history and LEED trials and errors to springboard from. It's not starting where LEED started from. There's this whole ground of knowledge base that exists as a platform that it's starting with. So it's got a huge advantage just in terms of where it can get to and how quickly it can get there, as opposed to the time it's taken for stuff like LEED and the LEED concepts to burn in.
Right. No, that's a good point. So, we suggest you get your well AP, you stay out in front with what's changing, but it is ever changing. Sometimes Jason and I, as the messengers, as the consultants or the teachers, it's ever changing. So don't shoot the messenger, but you got to keep raising the bar with LEED version 4 and LEED version 4.1 and new versions as well.
That's why there's always new workshops and new things to learn. That's one of the exciting things about what we do, and it's one of the frustrating things about what we do.
You're right. Well, I know you love to teach workshops, and you've helped a lot of people also pass their professional credential exams, say LEED exams. But is there a certain topic you really like to teach? Just curious.
Well, I think one of the things that we're seeing a lot of requests for today, because there is such a knowledge base now around LEED, is there's a lot of people who want more technical workshops and more in-depth workshops. The more general Green Associate type training has really almost become automated and online. And I know you guys offer a lot of online courses for that. And so a lot of the demand in the marketplace now is from professionals who have been in the business and maybe worked on a LEED project or two, or they're actively working on them. And they want to really dive deep into the technologies and the systems and the strategies. And that goes for Well also. The people who are jumping on the Well bandwagon early are probably the LEED APs and the LEED fellows who have been in the business for a while. And they already know and buy into all of the metrics behind why wellness is a prime thing to target.
No, I second that. So what we're hearing as educators, just so everyone listening knows, is there's a need for more 301 level advanced and 401 level mastery. Like, it's okay to get technical and sharpen these skills. It's not just what is LEED and how might I use it. Let's really get down to some special case uses and the technical side of it. So it's good to hear there's a need for that. But you and I also have agreed that it's very labor intensive. It's quite a lot of work to put together that curriculum and do full day workshops, and those are typically maybe in person. So just I second what you're saying there, and I think we just have to stay on it. We're trying to do more blended learning, where we have some live and some recorded, but we just got to continue to serve the industry.
And that seems to be a good combo. What I'm doing a lot more of lately is I'm doing in-person webinars for a small live group with a larger group online listening in.
I like that. That's real smart. I like that. So we talked about the wellness movement. We both agree that's kind of what's happening now and in the near future. That is the next chapter, the green building movement. But so far in your career, Jason, if you were to talk about yourself, what's your specialty? What's your gift? What do you think you're best at?
I would say my specialty and gift is probably understanding synergies. In my line of work, you've got to meet a budget and a schedule. And how do you build a cost-effective green building? I always tell people that unless you really understand the cost benefits and the synergies between the interaction of systems and components and technologies, it's really hard to do that cost effectively. So that's one thing. And the other thing is I take a really practical approach. I know that there is a budget and a schedule, and regardless of how green I want that building to be, it's not going to happen. It's not going to get realized unless I can meet those constraints. So, I understand the big picture and the vision, and I understand the synergies of how to get there on a practical budget. I'd say that's probably my biggest skill set.
That's great. And that's so important. You got to bring everybody together and keep them focused on the prize, and show where all the win-win-wins are. What are some pro tips that help you stay productive, help you stay successful? Any routines or rituals?
Well, yeah, I have developed some rituals over my lifetime. One of them is networking constantly. So, I've got regular groups and networks that I go to on a regular basis. I've got a Tuesday morning meeting and a Thursday morning meeting every week that I go to, and I drag myself out of bed early in the morning to do.
Nice.
Likewise, in the evenings, there's evening events sporadically that I make it a point to go to. But more than that, one of the things I try to do, and I think you probably do the same with your group, is to really put yourself out there as a thought leader in the marketplace in sustainability. And that means teaching workshops, broadcasting those workshops, doing things like this podcast, getting the word out about what you're doing, if it's a newsletter or something, so that people can see and hear the success stories. And that by default, makes you the expert in the room and where people want to go because they've seen something from you. And that's the latest and greatest.
Oh, that's good, man. That's really good.
That whole thought leader mentality is really what I've focused on in the last, I'd say, 5 to 7 years of building.
Right. And you don't, it's, you need the confidence, so you can spread the word and teach everything you know. And I think that's what you do a good job of. But I love networking constantly. So many times in business, we go get some nice new work, a new project, and then we shift all of our focus there, but we forget to keep networking, keep doing business development, keep feeding the machine. Now, you never know who you're going to meet and grow your influence too. So,
yeah, and it sounds like, oh, that's not networking. But, as you know, when you're working on projects all day and particularly intense projects, to take time to go to a meeting in the morning or to an event in the afternoon or evening is hard to fit that in with everything else going on.
Oh, yeah, very difficult. But sounds like you don't miss it. So great job, man. Well, I'm a fan of the bucket list. Jason, what are 1 or 2 things on your bucket list? Personal, work, adventure? Just curious.
Well, top 2 things on my list. One is to really take some time and travel the world. I've been fortunate in my line of work to go to places mostly for business and be able to extend that into a little bit of a vacation. But I've never had the time to really just go for the sake of going to see places and be places. And I have a long list of places I want to go see. So cool. Traveling the world is probably number 1 on my list.
Love it.
On a personal scale, I really want to walk the talk. I want to live in a truly sustainable off-grid home, which we are just in the process of initiating now.
Cool. That's very exciting, man. You got to practice what you preach, and I love it. Well, let's talk about books. I don't know if you listen to books or read books, a hard copy, but, is there a book or 2 you'd recommend?
Well, it's going to sound bad, but I don't really read books much. I just don't have time to read books. I don't make the time, I should say. I read a lot of articles these days, but earlier in my career, and not that long ago, there are some key books that I would recommend that if you have not read these books, these are sort of the foundation for the perspective on sustainability that I think everybody needs. And I'll just rattle a few off. Cradle to Cradle by Bill McDonough and Mr. Baumgart, Natural Capitalism, Green to Gold, Biomimicry, and Our Choice by Al Gore. Those would be my top 5 books that if those books haven't been read, you don't truly understand the sustainability movement.
All right. And we accept that challenge. I'll be putting the links to those books in the podcast show notes. No, I too, read some articles or listen to some podcasts. I wish I had more time to read more books.
Yeah, I hate to admit that I don't, but
man, it's one of those where there's only so much time in the day. And it sounds like you're learning from those you're networking with. That's another reason to put yourself out there is to learn from other people and their stories and what's going on in their world and their part of the industry. So I love it.
I'm also learning from the projects. One of the things about my educational side is everything that I teach is based on hands-on experience. And so we're doing a project right now, which is the first off-grid residential project that I've done. I've done net zero energy projects. I've done LEED projects. I've done projects that were designed around health and wellness. But I've not actually done a project that was both focused on health and wellness and truly off-grid. So, and I'm learning a lot. It's just starting construction now.
Yeah, no, that's going to be great practice for your off-grid home one day. And you're right. That's the best kind of learning is in the trenches, that sweat equity and the problem solving along the way. Well, yeah, man, it's been fascinating to kind of learn more about your story. Just the final couple questions here. Is there any advice you wish you'd had a little earlier in your career? And then any words of encouragement for someone jumping into this movement?
Well, in terms of what I wish I had earlier is I wish there had been more green building education in my college and early professional career. I think that's a totally different world today. So I think that's been solved for the most part, not entirely. And I highly suggest that folks try and get as much hands-on experience as they can, whether it's volunteering for an organization, doing an internship at an organization. The way you really learn this stuff is by doing. And that goes for a lot of things in life. But I learned the most by working on projects and trying to problem solve and trying to figure out how to really integrate sustainability into what we were doing in a practical way that I could sell to clients and not have them blink. And the other thing is always looking out for what's the next wave. I was fortunate to be at the right spot at the right time when LEED came out. Now we see the next wave with which we're all starting to really get on board and ride. And there's going to be another one. There's going to be another innovation. And I think it's going to be in products and renewables that you're going to see the next big wave.
That's awesome. I agree with everything you're saying there. So keep your head up so you're catching that wave. Don't be too head down on any one thing. But, Jason, again, congrats on your businesses, your LEED fellow, and just everything you've done. And look forward to working on more education together. And I just want to say thanks for being on the Green Building Matters podcast.
Well, Charlie, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At gbes.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to gbes.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode. And you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your colleagues. And if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.